Grip socks are great, and now they're even better with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Better fit, moisture wicking, amazing comfort, and all the extra grip you need. Choose from 10 different colors for just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
According to Adidas, as represented by the launch colorway, the Predator Edge draws inspiration from a Predator model that came 10 years before it in the Predator LZ. A Predator model that, looking back, was pretty significant in that the LZ was the first one to not feature a natural leather upper, something that has remained true in the Predator series for all non-limited releases to this very day. 10 years later, the Predator LZ is back. Ladies and gentlemen, back again in remake form, the Adidas Predator LZ1, seen here in what is kind of a reverse of an original David Beckham Predator LZ colorway in pink, white, and black, featuring what is supposed to be a one-to-one remake of the OG LZ upper from 2012 with hybrid touch as well as your rubber lethal zones, and then sitting on top of a modern-day Soleplate, not the top-end Edge Plus or Edge.1 Soleplate, however, but instead the Soleplate from the Edge.2 takedown model. Kind of a strange decision we'll talk about in just a second. And of course, like many Adidas Predator remake models, the price tag is perhaps a little bit higher than it should be. Which leaves us with a couple different questions to answer. One being, how do they compare to the OGs? Two being, how do they compare to the Predator model 10 years later? Both the Edge Plus and the Edge.1, have Adidas actually improved? And ultimately, whether or not these are worth the price tag. Is the Predator LZ still a wearable and functional football boot 10 years later? I answer all of these questions and more in today's video, including how they fit and feel on feet. So if you want to learn more about them, please stick around, watch the entire review. And if you are interested in a pair of these limited edition boots for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And as always, guys, if you enjoy these brutally honest reviews, please don't forget to support this video with a like, and make sure you're subscribed along with hitting that little bell notification so you don't miss out on my upcoming reviews of all the new football boots of 2022. So first things first, just a quick history lesson on the original Predator LZ. They came out in 2012, replacing the very popular Adi Power Predator, which of course upset a lot of people because this was a major shift in the Predator concept, kind of trending it more towards the speed boot category, given how much success Adidas was having with the F50 Adizero series at the time. Of course, it's not a leather upper, it's instead hybrid touch synthetic, the first Predator to not feature a natural leather upper, and obviously something that has continued in the Predator series ever since. This is a really solid synthetic material that we'd see used on a bunch of different Adidas models over the years, and honestly, despite it not having the softness and general comfort that only natural leather can provide, it's a really nice material. Pair that up with their lethal zones concept, which is basically rubber scattered across the upper, again, kind of trending away from power boots and into the more popular and kind of newer concept of control boots. Tons of extra grip on the ball, again, more so than any other Predator that came before it, and then a giant memory foam insert kind of here on the midfoot for control and passing. Of course, the outsole was heavily inspired by the F50 Adizero series, even called the sprint frame, just like the F50, making this the lightest Predator model to date. And of course, the transition away from that classic bladed TRX stud pattern, going with the same layout that we've now seen on pretty much every single Adidas boot ever since these came out. If you're not a fan of where the Predator series is today, this is the football boot to blame. As for the LZ1 remake, I would be lying if I didn't say that I was at least a little bit disappointed, and the reason for that is not because I think this is a bad pair of football boots. In fact, I really like them. I would personally rather wear the Predator LZ1 remake over the current Predator Edge. I'll say that right now, there's no doubt in my mind. Where the disappointment comes is in the very high standard that Adidas have created for themselves with these remakes. When you're talking about the uppers, they have been as close to one-to-one as possible. They go through a lot of trouble to make the details as close as possible. And while they've gone through enough trouble with this LZ1, there are so many elements about it that just seem like they either didn't care or just kind of cheaped out a little bit. Because I think even when just looking at this side by side with the original Predator LZ, it just has so much of a chunkier, bulkier, just made with less care type of vibe about it. I know this is a completely different colorway, so it's not the best comparison, but just look at how clean and slim all of the material is along the side of the ankle and through the heel liner here on the original. And then if you look at the remake, it's just chunky and bulky and padded. You can see how loose the heel liner is. It has the appearance of, dare I say, a counterfeit pair of football boots. The quality is obviously not that bad, but I just don't know what they decided to do here as to why the construction seems borderline sloppy. And maybe it's just my pair, but it seems like there's a distinct gap between the lining on the inside and the upper on the outside, where there's almost like pockets of air within the upper. It just doesn't look right. As for the actual feel of the football boots compared to the original, again, you can feel the sloppiness in terms of how the material kind of wraps around your foot. And as far as the Hybrid Touch synthetic is concerned, it just feels like a cheaper variation of what was found on the original. I'm not sure if it's a different material altogether, but it definitely doesn't have the same premium feel on feet. This is a little bit thicker, it's a little bit chunkier in terms of how it moves with your foot, and maybe that's just down to shaping more than anything, but it doesn't have quite the same feel. Even the tongue itself just has a cheapness to it that wasn't found there on the original. Nonetheless, the touch on the ball is still very good, and they are infinitely softer than what you're going to find from the Prime Knit upper on the top end Predator Edge models that are currently available. As far as the lethal zone elements are concerned, they're pretty one-to-one to the original. You have this one here on the medial side of the forefoot, kind of big toe area almost. You have this area across the top of the foot, the area on the lateral side of the forefoot, and then your main striking area, which is kind of the typical Predator element, kind of right here across the bone on your foot, with the lacing system being slightly off-centered, and of course having a standalone tongue. This, of course, represents the modern era of the Predator series, where it transitioned from a power boot into a control boot, hence why you also see the memory foam pad here running through the midfoot for the sake of additional cushioning, which almost feels like it's not there. Again, something that they seem to have cheaped out on when compared to the OG. And not to continue picking on the quality, but considering how much these cost, look at the size difference between the black element on the forefoot on both the left and right football boot. Build quality concerns aside, at least when you're talking about the feel and performance characteristics of this upper, it is 95% of what you got from the original Predator LZ. The Hybrid Touch is soft, it feels great on the ball, it feels even better on your feet, certainly more comfortable than what you're gonna find from the modern day Predator Edge. And as far as the lethal zone elements are concerned, rubber was just as sticky 10 years ago as it is now, so you're getting all of that additional grip in a package that fits and feels significantly more comfortable than the modern day Predator Edge. Moving to the rear, it of course does feature the same low-cut design where the back is extended a little bit higher than it perhaps needs to be, but not to the point where they're uncomfortable. Again, the padding and just spacing of the liner and the upper on the sides of the ankle are so much chunkier than what you're gonna find on the original. It just looks cheap more than anything. And then the heel liner, like I said, it has the same texturing, but again, feels like a cheaper material, and it's just pulled very loosely. Again, kind of like a fake pair of football boots, which is really, really unusual. The insole fully removable, I'll give you guys a quick look at that. These feature an insole that does have this synthetic suede lining on the surface, and they're made from a single layer of black foam. Not the same as the original Predator LZ, but also not too far off. Which brings us to the base of the LZ remake, where I have to admit I am less than impressed, because instead of giving us the top end sole plate, the facet frame found on the Predator Edge Plus and Predator Edge.1, they've instead given us the Edge.2 sole plate, which admittedly, just like the original Predator LZ, is a solid one-piece sole plate, meaning that there is no split sole, there's no gap in the midfoot, it just runs from heel to toe, which I guess does make the Edge.2 sole plate more true to the original. However, this is a sole plate that comes on their $130 Predator model, and it feels every bit like a takedown model sole plate on an LZ remake that does not retail for a takedown model price. You might be wondering why they would do something like this, and I think it has to do with the construction of the upper. This is a remake of a football boot that originally came out in 2012, and it was never designed to have a split sole, so I'm not sure that the upper construction has the layout for them to kind of finish it across the bottom of the foot like you would normally have here on the Predator Edge with its split sole. So I guess they could do it. However, this would definitely be the easier and cheaper way out, which is what they've obviously opted for. They did try to make this sole plate look more expensive, giving it the wearable finish on the surface where all of this fancy pink and white detail will chip away because it's just paint, translucent studs, and you can even see the weight that would normally be tungsten on the top end model has been replaced with a translucent piece of plastic, so you don't get the added weight from the modern Predator facet frame either, at least what's on the top end models, and instead you get a sole plate that is solid plastic, isn't particularly lightweight, and doesn't really feel bad, but certainly doesn't feel premium. Again, considering the price tag, it's a bit of a disappointment. Which brings us to the weight where, like I mentioned, the original Predator LZ kind of trended the Predator series towards the speed boot side of things in that it was pretty lightweight. The question is, how light is the LZ Remake? Do they even come close? The answer to that question, spoiler alert, is no. I'm gonna weigh them both for you on a scale in real time. Keep in mind that my LZ OGs are a size 9 and my Remakes are a 9.5. So these are slightly larger, not the greatest comparison, but I think you'll get the idea. We'll start off with the OG LZ. They weigh in at a lightweight 8.2 ounces, the equivalent of 232 grams. We'll change the scale back to ounces and we'll throw on the Remake, which again does feature a takedown model sole plate, typically not the lightest thing in the world. They weigh in at 9.6 ounces, the equivalent of 272 grams, which is a significant weight difference between the two. Granted, these are half a size smaller, but even if they were half a size bigger, you would definitely notice that the OG is much lighter feeling on feet than the Remake, which isn't very light at all. On feet, the LZ1 Remakes look and feel bulkier than the originals, and I'm not sure if that's down to slight differences in materials used or the construction being kind of on the puffy side for whatever reason, possibly a combination of the two, but the boots just don't have that same kind of thinner, almost streamlined speed boot effect that the original LZ seemed to have on feet. So if you were hoping that the Remake is going to fit and feel exactly like the original, that's probably the biggest deviation. Not so much the feel of the upper, but the overall shaping of the football boots, which does ultimately affect the feel. As far as the overall shape is concerned, because of that Edge.2 sole plate, these are definitely wider, especially through the heel and midfoot when compared to the original LZ. And in general, they're football boots that are going to fit most people in terms of overall width. You have plenty of adjustability because of that off-centered lacing system with the standard kind of standalone tongue. And in general, the boots are very comfortable. The hybrid touch upper feels good, although it is evident that this is a sole plate from a takedown model in that it doesn't feel particularly premium, but definitely not terrible either. So width-wise, as long as you don't have ridiculously wide feet, these should fit most people, and they're certainly a little bit wider than the original LZs were. As far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you're looking to order a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, the way I see it at least, there are basically two reasons as to why you would want to buy the LZ1 Remake. Reason number one being that you really liked the original and you want something that, at least when you're talking about the upper, offers a similar type of feel and performance characteristic on the ball in terms of the softness of hybrid touch and the additional grip provided by the rubber lethal zones. Reason number two is because you really like the current Predator concept of having rubber across the upper, but you don't like the stiffness and general fit and feel of the modern day Predator Edge, in which case I do think this is a nice alternative given that it's basically the same concept in a football boot form factor that fits and feels significantly more comfortable. As far as Adidas Remakes go, this certainly isn't their best effort, but they're still fun to wear and you get the idea of what the Predator LZ was about 10 years ago. Like I mentioned already 3 or 4 times, I would definitely pick these to wear over either the Predator Edge Plus or Edge.1 that is currently available, but unless you absolutely must have a Predator model, or if you're just like a die-hard David Beckham fan, this is probably one that you don't need in your collection.